Hi everybody, I hope you're having a great day. It's super windy out here, so hoping that I can manage to keep it all together during this live. I hope everybody's well and you've had a great week. So this is my third Facebook Live that I have done so far about how to deal with a narcissist. And this week's topic is going to be, I have notes, of course, because I always have so much I want to tell you guys, and I never want to forget anything. This week's tip is to know what your must-haves are versus what you'd like to have. And there is a distinction there. There is your absolute minimum boundary for what it is you want to achieve, regardless of what you are dealing with your narcissist, versus, well, wouldn't it be nice to get the world, right? Because the reality is, with a narcissist, they think that the engagement that you're having and what you're doing with them is a game. They look at it as a game. And as such, they have to win. And the reality is they often will try to win or will work to win at any and all costs. And in my personal experience, I'd be really curious to know if anybody else has had this experience. The reality is they often will try to win even when it's hurts them, right? I never really understood the phrase cutting off your nose to spite your face until I went through a legal battle with my ex, because it was complete insanity. He did at least as much damage to himself, if not more, than he did to me and the kids in the process. I would say that that's true from a financial perspective. Let me clarify that piece of it. So know that your narcissist, it's all about a game to them, and they want to win. So you knowing exactly what you must have, the outcome that you must have in this process, is going to help guide you through how you deal with the narcissist, what you communicate to the narcissist, the other parties involved, and again, so much of my experience, specifically, a lot of these tips come from a legal standpoint, having to deal with schools, having to deal with therapists, so keep that in mind. The first tip I'm going to tell you, and I made this mistake firsthand, and let me just say it created a significant impact on my ultimate outcome, the length of time that it took and the cost. So my first tip to you is don't ever tell the narcissist in your life what it is that you want. Don't ever give them that information, because then they, as part of the game, and they want to win, they will do everything in their power to ensure that you don't get that thing. So don't share with them what your must-haves are. The second thing is to, I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but give them little wins. So I really tried to think about a good example to use before going live, and I was struggling to do so. So I'm going to do my best. Give them little wins. So for example, if you want a 2-week vacation in the summertime with your kids, then give them a little win of the long weekend that they want before that, right? So they think they're getting something, they think they're winning. Maybe tell them that your 2 weeks really has to be over the 4th of July, and then in reality it doesn't. And so then they say, no, this year is my year to have the 4th of July, so absolutely I'm going to take that, and you can have the 2 weeks, but it has to start on July 5th. Okay? You let them think that they're winning, but in fact, you get the 2 weeks that you want. So that's another way to give them little wins. That's an example of that. The third is to start, this is kind of similar to what you would do if you were, how some people look at negotiation, is you start with bigger things, right? So your must-have is, we're going to stick with this example, we'll see how well it translates. You stick with the example of the 2-week vacation that you want to take, so you start with 3 weeks. Well, we really wanted to go for 3 weeks. No, absolutely, you may not absolutely go for 3 weeks. Well, then what would you recommend? Well, you can go for a week. Well, could we meet in the middle and do 2 weeks? and they agree to that. So that's my first tip, is one, when you know exactly what your must-haves are, to not tell them what it is. You never want to give them that information. To give them little wins so that they'll be more willing to comply with other stuff down the road, or to appear to give you what you want. And 3, to compromise it down if you can, there are a way you can build that in. The second thing I want to tell you that is so absolutely critical, and it's going to seem kind of like, how does this fit together? It really does, though. So stay with me. To a narcissist, how they look is absolutely critical. So you see how they look, their image to the outside world is absolutely critical. So often you will see a narcissist have expectations, specifically so their image isn't tarnished. So keep that in mind first and foremost. The second piece to keep in mind when it comes to this piece of dealing with them is, in my experience, the vast majority of narcissists, that image so often ties very closely and very directly to money. So knowing that your must-have, how that ties into your narcissist's view of their image and money, will help you get those things that you want and need in whatever part of the process you're going through. Keep that in mind. Because money is such a powerful tool, you really want to consider the reality that, I'm just going to be really kind of blunt and upfront about this. It's very possible that you're going to feel like you have to buy your freedom or your peace or your happiness, and that can be a very, very difficult thing to do. So recognize that it can be a challenge and that it can be highly frustrating to feel like you have to buy your way out of the engagement and the interaction with the narcissist. Because of that, as part of knowing what your must-haves are, is know what that, again, this often relates specifically when you are divorcing a narcissist, is what that amount of money is. What is it that you need from a standpoint of money? What is it that you are legally would be in line with what, for example, if you stood in front of a judge, what they would say is fair from a monetary standpoint, and then set your expectations according to that. Again, it can feel so much like you are having to buy peace and freedom, which frankly are things that we should be entitled to in our lives. And the reality is, if you are close to a narcissist or you are in a relationship with a narcissist, it is just the way it is. And so I'm sorry to give you that hard truth. I feel like having this dialogue to begin with helps to prepare you go through these individual steps so that you can get through it more easily, right? What I found was, as challenging as it was to manage the financial piece of it, in the long run, you can recover financially in some ways more easily than it takes to recover emotionally from having to put out the energy to fight for money. So that's just my perspective, and anybody else that's been through this process has had to go through specifically a divorce with a narcissist, or has had any kind of, maybe it's being in business with a narcissist, please put in the comments your experience and if this rings true for you, or if you've had some other experience, because we definitely want to provide in these Facebook Lives the ability to give a comprehensive look at other ways that anyone else out there that's been through this has experienced success. All right, so My third tip is when all else fails, use the gray rock method. So I'm going to explain what the gray rock method is. I did not use the gray rock method. I didn't know about the gray rock method in the very beginning of my experience, and I really wish I had. So I hope that this information helps anybody else out there, even if it just helps one of you out there to avoid some of the time and energy and pain that can go into having to extricate yourself from a relationship with a narcissist or deal with them. The gray rocking method is this. And it ties in directly with knowing what your must-haves are. Because what you effectively do is you know that this is your must-have thing over here. So I really am gonna use a personal example here. So my must-have was the kids, absolutely. Having the idea of going through a divorce and not having access to my kids was literally probably the most painful thing I've ever been through in my whole life. And I made the mistake of expressing to my ex that the kids were really the only thing I cared about. Okay. In hindsight, if I'd known then what I know now, what I would have done instead was I would have said, the thing that matters to me most is that I get this amount of money, and I get half of our property, and you're going to pay this amount a month in child support. And I had focused on money, right? Because as I just mentioned, money is often really important to narcissists because it impacts the image and how they look to the world. And so I would have diverted all of my communication to talk about how important money was and that was my focus. And I would have left custody and the kids over here without saying a word. So the idea of gray rocking is that thing that you really want becomes very boring. It becomes completely uninteresting to the narcissist. They don't even think about it because they think that as part of the game, that what you're telling them, money, 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 I want money, and you need to pay child support, I deserve to have half the house, right? If you focus them on that and you have this other piece over here that is your most important, that's what gray rocking is. You create an environment where the thing that matters to you most is something that isn't even on their radar. If you want more explanation for gray rocking, please put something in the comment and I can give some additional examples. I can think of some additional examples. Also, I have always used a reference in my process of learning about this topic and working through it through a site called, I get her newsletter, which is called Lemonade Wisdom. I'll put the link in, I'll put the note in the comments because I'm blanking at the moment on what her actual site is. So in any case, she kind of explains what gray rocking is. You can also Google it. There's another thing called yellow rocking, and we're actually going to talk about that this month with my podcast. We're talking about communication and conflict. And so I'm going to use some yellow rocking examples, both in a later episode of how to deal with narcissists and some of the podcast and communication posts I'll put out on Facebook. So we'll see some consistency there this month, and keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions or I can support you in any way, please, please, please let me know. You can put a comment down below. You can always reach out to me. I really want to make sure that you guys are all supported, particularly if you are dealing with a narcissist in your life at the moment, because they are so not fun. And check out my podcast, new episodes 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Love you all, and I'll see you soon.